Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. On today's episode, we are talking hiking, how life can give you second chances, and I'm sitting down with an author of a book called The Dog Who Took Me Up a Mountain, and also somebody that started his career and is a software tech giant. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on my guest, Rick Crandall. How are you?
Hello. It's good to be here.
How's everything?
Things are great.
I'm so excited to have you on. So I do want to start back. I always like to start back with your background is primarily in software.
Computer software technology.
So you were in Silicon Valley before Silicon Valley was what it is today.
It was right at the start. It was in
Okay.
the mid-1960s.
Was that the start of it?
It was.
So this is before like Bill Gates was working at Microsoft and...
It was before personal computers. Most people think the
amazing?
computer industry started with personal computers, but it started way before that.
So what was your job in the 60s then?
The computer principle was called time sharing.
Okay.
And it was the first time a computer was used by more than one person and online, where you actually used teletypes connected through network. And you didn't have things like cell phones and Wi-Fi and all that kind of business.
The good life, right?
It's, well, and when we started, we were using the computer at night because we were, they were very expensive.
Right.
And so we'd wake up at 2 a.m, use the computer till 6, and then we go to sleep.
Oh my gosh. So what did you make your first money off of? Was it the time sharing?
I started a company called ComShare in February of 1966.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just a graduate student at the University of Michigan and went out to California because the similar effort was going on at UCal Berkeley.
Gotcha.
And so we formed a collaborative effort out there.
That's so. And where did you do your undergrad?
Undergrad was at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Nice.
And then out on the West Coast, I wasn't in the Berkeley program, but we were partnered with the Electrical Engineering Department of Berkeley.
Gotcha. And did you, so when was the personal computer? That came in the 70s, right?
No, that was really 1982.
82. Okay. And so have you met Steve Jobs or Bill Gates?
Bill Gates, yes. Steve Jobs, I can't remember. I might have met him, but it would have been at a big event.
So when did you first meet Bill Gates?
It was when Microsoft sold the 50 millionth copy of Windows and had a big black tie event.
Wow.
Which I was invited to. And he wanted somebody to talk about what was the importance of Windows, and so grabbed me out of the crowd and put me on a big screen, and then he showed that at a Comdex, which is one of the main shows that used to be for computer industry.
Yeah. And do you consider yourself technically savvy?
Yes.
Because you've always been in this business? Because I know, like, my dad, he's good with computers, but he doesn't consider himself, like, tech savvy. But he's also a CPA. Not a tech guy.
I've come up through the years through all the different waves of technology and software.
Right. So you're like, you were ahead of the game.
Definitely
ahead of the game.
Yeah. And each phase, each renewal was being ahead of the game. So I'm used to doing what I call missionary work.
Okay.
Yeah. And but it worked.
Yeah.
The company succeeded. It grew. It was one of the early companies to go public and be international and then we converted from time sharing to software.
Okay, gotcha. So you were living in Silicon Valley at the time.
I was.
So now you're in Aspen. When did you make that move that led to this book we're going to talk about?
After we developed enough technology to be commercial with it, the group of us, there was a company on the West Coast called Timeshare. There was ourselves called ComShare. There was UCal Berkeley. We each took a copy of the work we had done, and I went back to Ann Arbor, where the company's headquarters was. And that's where we grew the company, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Okay. So I was actually a Midwesterner for a while, born in New York and raised here, but was a Midwesterner for a while.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until way later, because I ran that company for 25 years. And then after that, sold the company. That's when I moved to Aspen.
And why'd you choose Aspen out of all the other mountain towns?
Out of the other mountain towns.
Well, there's Vail and Beaver Creek. Yeah.
Aspen is a bit more remote, so it's not quite as crowded from people traveling in.
Right.
Aspen people like to say it's because it's an authentic silver mining town, but I don't get involved in those arguments.
Okay. So how is it in the summer? It's real quiet.
It is not. Summer is as busy as winter. And we have a saying that you can come a week a year to ski in the winter, but once you come once in the summer, you'll buy a place there.
I've never been to Aspen in the summer. I've been to Vail a lot, but I've never been to Aspen.
There's a lot of events. A lot of my tech buddies come for various things. There's the Aspen Ideas Festival. There's all kinds of, and the hiking, biking, outdoors activities are amazing.
I miss that living in
And
New
I also
York.
chair Jazz Aspen, and so that is a major series of jazz performers that we bring into town during the year.
How cool. So let's get to your book, and this is your first book, right?
It's my first book for the broad market. I have written on technical subjects and other things.
Right. So your book is called The Dog Who Took Me Up a Mountain.
Yes.
And this all happened while you were living in Aspen?
Yes.
And the dog's name, it was Emmy.
Emmy.
Right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and kind of take our listeners on a little bit of a journey that they can expect when they purchase your book and read it?
Well, those who have invested in the stock market or know the tech world know that 2001 was not a very good year.
Yeah, right.
In fact, it was awful. And with the crash that happened at the beginning of that year, that affected me both emotionally and financially, downward.
Yeah. And when you say emotionally, can you kind of give us some examples of that? Because financially we all get, but emotionally, what was that like for you?
Well, that was derivative from the financial because being a technology person and a technology investor, it was the tech stocks that were hit the worst downward.
I remember that.
And so after having believed that going up was permanent, and all of a sudden you're down on the floor financially, it affects you. Then later, 6 months later, it was 9/11, and that was another emotional, really downward hit. So 2001 was really a tough year, and it was I wasn't the greatest person to be friends with at the time because I was, not myself.
Do you feel like your identity kind of changed when you went from having probably lots of money to no money?
No, I never. No money would be a bit extreme, but it's much less for sure. No, I never tied my personality or who I was to the money sort of things. I was
good.
More a person who was a technologist and pushing the frontiers of technology. And I wasn't going to stop doing that, but it was more like plodding instead of the passion that it had been for the decades before.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of like how to make that next money versus how to
put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Right. Which makes such a difference.
But, it does. And it's, as is the underlying theme of this book, passion really is at the core of what makes quality of life. And I found mine from a very unlikely place at that point, which is that my wife, Pamela, decided to get a dog. And she had been an animal lover her whole life. She researched what breeds. And she got Emmy, who is an Australian Terrier, small dog, about 20 pounds in size, short legs, but strong.
So cute.
And good looking.
Yeah, very good looking, right?
And I had fun with her. Pamela tried a number of dog-related activities, like going to dog shows. She took her to a dog camp in Vermont, where the whole camp is all about what to do with your dog.
Oh, that's too funny.
I don't know how many people know that exists. And but she didn't like any of that, the dog, Emmy. But when we started taking her hiking, she lit up.
Oh.
And it seemed like that was her mission in life, what her passion was.
Right. And you could just see that. So do you think like Emmy actually liked hiking more than you did when you guys first started?
Yeah, definitely. I was following her. Wherever we went, she would go to the highest point she could find, if it was the top of a rock or a boulder or the top of a ridge. And I was always the one trekking after her. And she clearly loved this.
Right. So what year did you move to Aspen?
In 1999.
Okay. And when did you do your first hike?
Oh, modest, just hiking around. Today, I probably wouldn't even call it a hike, but probably a couple of years after that, in 2001.
In 2001, okay. Yeah. So that was almost your therapy when you were kind of going through
just to get outside, get some air into your lungs, the crisp, the blue sky in Colorado. All of that was good.
And so, since that you took your first hike in 2001, you have climbed all 14?
Well, so hikes are different than climbs.
Okay.
And it's once I saw Emmy always wanting to go higher, we kept going higher. And in Aspen, there's a lot of places you can get higher.
So she was kind of the one that pushed you to the next.
I would say she pulled me.
Pulled you. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And we finally saw a mountain that looked approachable. We didn't quite know how. We experimented, and we got to that summit. And it was the first time I had been at a mountain summit. And she was so joyous, and I was feeling this kind of spiritual feeling that climbers get when they get to a summit.
Okay.
That we both decided that this was the kind of thing we wanted to do. My challenge was I was 63 when that happened, which is not exactly the age that you start thinking about climbing high mountains.
This is, yeah. It's good for you, though.
Well, it took overcoming some challenges. It took getting more physical. It took losing some weight. So it had impact on diet. It had impact on physical exercise. Even studying what things were in my backpack, and to see how to reduce the weight of those.
So these are the types of climbs that you would have to spend the night because they're days. Or were these?
A lot of the climbs, yes. You would load up a backpack with a tent, with sleeping bags and so on, food. And you would hike all the way up, usually to a lake, so there's a source of water.
Okay.
And that would be very close to where a climb would start. And then you would start literally in the dark the next morning, because you would want to get to summit and off summit before the possibility of lightning storms, thunderstorms coming in.
And when you say summit, like
to the peak.
To the peak of the mountain. Okay. So when you're climbing, are you on harnesses like
can be, and a couple of them I was, but I learned that if I had good handholds, if there was enough good stuff to hold on to, even if it was pretty vertical and exposed, that I was okay. I didn't have a fear of height. Oh my!
Like you could die at any moment, but
you could. But I mean, you could say that driving a car too if you make the wrong turn.
You're right. You're right.
And
good point.
It looks scarier than if you're really close to the mountain and you know where the next step is, that next handhold.
Yeah.
One thing that it does is it really teaches you how to be in the moment, because if your mind is on something else, you're probably going to come off
and die. Yeah, that's like kind of a life or death situation, which is, I think, the biggest struggle for most people today is staying present and not thinking about
I agree with that.
All the noise in your mind. So that was a really good training for you.
It's one of the lessons I learned.
Isn't that amazing? So you guys did your first hike, and then from there you were like, I have to.
We just kept going higher. And in Colorado, the highest mountains in the continental U.S. are between 14,000 and 14,500 feet high.
So that's why they're called 14ers.
And they're called 14ers. Okay. There's 58 of them in the Rockies.
Wow.
And they're all in Colorado.
I did not know that. So those are the highest mountains in the States?
In the continental, yeah.
Wow,
there's a few in California, and then there's one in Washington, but most of them are in Colorado.
I did not know that there was 58 14ers.
Yeah.
And you did all of them?
I did.
Oh, my gosh.
By the end
and you
of
didn't start till you were 63 years old?
The first 14er, that was a 13er at 63. So 64 was my first 14er. And I finished.
It's never too late to start. Never too late to start. Oh, my gosh.
Now you're talking the theme of this book, that it's never too late to find a new passion in life.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Because a lot of people think, I'm going through some stuff right now where I'm like, oh, if I don't do, like, is it too late for me to do this? Or is it too late for me to do this? And how do you conquer that fear to realize that it's never too late?
That is a really great core question. And because it's not just when you're later in life, at any time where you're facing a big goal or a challenge that doesn't look like it can be surmounted.
Yeah.
What I've learned, and I learned this in business, and I applied it to mountain climbing, well, you could also apply it in reverse.
Okay.
Is that it was something big and seemingly that you can't do, to break it down into pieces and go after each piece, because that feels more approachable, more doable.
Right.
And when you're standing down at the base of a mountain looking up, and if you can see the peak from there, you feel like there's no way I'm getting up there. It's way too high. It looks way too difficult.
And that's like anything. I think if people are going to start a business or start a new career, it is that the goal is the mountain.
And you don't really know all the pieces, or all the ways, how you're even going to get there. So if you just set a goal to go the first couple 100 feet, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
Well, that looks more doable. And then when you get there, you go for the next segment.
Yeah.
In business, when you break a problem down into pieces, you have the luxury, if you manage properly, that you can give some of those to other people. You can delegate.
Right.
Right? And you do some yourself and some you give off. In mountain climbing, you got to do it all yourself.
Yes,
so that's
true.
the difference. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Emmy was with you when you did all these?
No, not all of them.
Okay.
When we got started, and by the time we got to our 16th 14er, I judged that she was getting too old. Odd that I wasn't judging that I was getting too old, but
yeah.
I felt more responsible to her than I did to me. So she was about 11 and a half. The next summer, she was going to be 12 and a half, and it was just too old to take her up more mountains.
Yeah.
So we did hikes. That's what I would do to prep.
Okay.
But then I went on. That's when I decided that her passion had transferred to me and become my passion.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. People have asked me as I go around the country talking at book events, and I talk about this theme, and they ask me, well, how do I find my next passion?
Yeah.
And there's no one answer to that question, because I found mine by following a dog, and I can't advise people, well, just follow your dog and you're going to find your passion.
Yeah, most dogs are just going to the bathroom in a park.
In part, it is about first knowing that you really are seeking a new passion, so you become open to it, and then sensing what's attracting you more than other things, and going for it even if you think you can't.
Okay.
Overcoming the challenge.
So what if somebody says, I just can't do that? Like, is there any advice you have?
Yeah, take a piece of it. Don't go for the whole thing.
Right.
Go for the start. I mean, if you think you can't do a painting that's going to be attractive to everybody,
right,
well, just do a little something for yourself and then see where it goes. Take a few courses and do it piece by piece. So to me, the only way to get over a fear is to get a piece of it that you're not scared of. And then when you get to that point, pick the next piece.
Right.
There may be other ways, but this is a way I learned how to overcome fears.
So when did you decide to write this book?
I decided to write the book somewhere in the middle of the mountain climbing, because so many of the climbers...
Okay. So around like the 20th or something, 25th or 26th peak?
Yes.
Okay.
In that area. So because by that time I was over 70.
Wow.
And I was climbing...
You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
You look very great.
I was climbing with a very experienced climber who was happy to go my speed.
Okay.
But one of his quirks, if you will, was he always loved telling other climbers we would run into how old I was.
Yeah, right.
And they would react like that was inspirational.
It is.
And that it meant that they had a longer life climbing than they thought they had. Mm-hmm. So that was with mountains. But the mountain can be a metaphor for anything, really.
It completely.
And so many of them said to me, you ought to write a book.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. And when I got the 58th and final mountain, I said, okay, let's see what writing a book is all about.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I found an agent, a literary agent.
Yeah.
He found me a publisher, HCI Books, who did the original Chicken Soup for the Soul series. So this was kind of in their wheelhouse.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like a feel-good passion book.
Right.
Like inspirational.
And then there you go.
That's amazing. And when did Emmy pass on?
It was about, I think it was 2.5 years ago at age almost 15.
Okay. That obviously was very, very hard.
It was. And writing this book, she keeps revisiting me because I keep rereading the book to make sure that it's, what we want.
Was she cremated?
No, she was buried.
She was buried. Okay.
She was buried right near a trail that she probably did 300 times.
Oh, okay. I was wondering that if she was cremated, if her ashes were put on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. I mean, what an amazing little dog. How dogs can just
She was
change
amazing.
your life. And
it wasn't just that she was fun to be with and, watch her as we were on climbs. She actually did things that helped me do the climb.
And what was that?
Well, for example, anybody I climbed with was faster than me.
Okay.
And on those big mountains, when you separate from your buddies, you can get lost or you can lose them.
Right.
Because there's ridges and there's valleys and there's gullies and so on.
Uh-huh.
When they would go out of sight of me, Emmy would run up to see where they were, and then she would run back far enough that I could see her like a sentinel.
Oh.
And she'd keep going back and forth and connecting us.
Oh.
So that was an amazing stunt. She also, when she would get on a rock that was teetering, that was unstable, she would stand on the rock and teeter on it and look back at me as though to say, "This one moves. Don't come on this one."
Oh my!
It was astonishing. How do dogs know this?
They're a lot smarter than we think.
They're smarter, and they observe, and they are in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the mountains when I heard you talk, the mountain that's on the cover is also one of my favorite mountains because it's on the can of Coors Light.
So, okay, the one on the cover,
which I never knew.
No, hold on. The one on the cover is not the one on the Coors Light.
I thought so.
In fact, I wondered whether I should have put the name of it on the inside cover. That mountain is called Mount Antero.
Okay.
That's on the cover. And actually, that mountain is where a lot of miners still go looking for semi-precious stones. Apparently, they're there somewhere, and you see people with picks chopping away at it. The mountain you're talking about is called Wilson Peak.
Wilson,
which
okay.
is near Telluride. That's the one that's been on the Coors beer label for 110 years.
And you've done that one, right?
Done them all, and that is a 14er.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wonder why they picked that mountain.
I almost think I might know the answer to that, but I can't remember it because when I did these mountains, each of them, I wrote a blog story about them.
Yeah.
And I researched things like how did it get named?
Right. What's
some of the lore about the mountain? And so that might be in the blog story, but I can't remember why exactly he picked that.
So, and when you're doing these hikes, obviously nature is so much more powerful than any of us will ever be. So there's mountain lions. Did you ever run into a mountain lion? I mean, this is...
I have. I've run into just about everything that's up there. And there's...
Do you guys carry, like, guns or flares or anything with you?
It would be the wrong thing to do to try to shoot a big animal like a bear or a mountain lion.
Okay.
Because you might just wound the animal, and then they're even more dangerous.
Right. Okay.
So there are other evasive techniques for each of them, and they're different for each of them. For example, we've definitely run into bears several times. And one time, a bear literally ran through my tent, put his foot through the tent, crushed down on my head. And it was fortunate that my head was on air pillows because it gave me some cushion. I don't know what would have happened to it if that would have... But he ripped right through the tent, and it was a mess.
And this is when Emmy was there?
Emmy was not there for that one.
She was not. Okay.
No, but Emmy, there were a number where Emmy was, and that little dog would chase the bears off because there are black bears in Colorado, and they're not as bad as the grizzly bears that you find, or the brown bears you find further north and west. And noise will generally chase them off, and Emmy seemed to know that.
But what about the mountain lions? Because you do hear in Colorado.
Mountain lions are typically nocturnal.
Okay.
And, of course, we start while it's still dark. Their normal prey are deer and even coyotes and other animals, not really humans.
Okay.
It's been known for them to attack humans.
Yeah.
Not common.
Okay.
We ran into one just recently. This was way past Emmy, of course, that literally was tracking us, and it was in the dark. We could see his two eyes and the shape of his body. But he was staying around a lake looking for goats, mountain goats that would come to the lake, and that was his prey, and he didn't come after us. We were nervous, though.
But that's a scary feeling.
We were nervous.
That's kind of a life or death situation. Those animals are powerful.
They're very powerful. They've been known to be beat off, and we hike with hiking sticks.
Okay.
So you have a little bit of defense, But if a mountain lion wants to kill you, he's going to kill you.
Do you know that one little bridge? I think it's you go through the Continental Divide, like the big tunnel, when you're coming from Denver, right, on I-70.
Yeah, Eisenhower Tunnel.
You go through. Okay, Eisenhower Tunnel, and then right off to the left, when you're going to the mountains, there's this little bridge. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's off to the left, and there's a sign with it's like a memorial sign with a little biker on it. Have you seen this?
Well, there's a number of signs like that, unfortunately.
Well, that guy was eaten by a mountain lion on that bridge.
Yeah.
He was biking, so it's
very, very rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Many more people will die because they do something stupid on the mountain.
Okay.
Than being attacked by a mountain lion. I mean, I've been out, I can't even count how many hundreds of times I've been out camping.
So when you go on some of these hikes, does the thought cross your mind that this could be your last?
No.
Never.
No.
Okay. You don't think about it at all?
Not at all.
Okay. Which is great, because I think a lot of people would be like...
The only time I ever felt that I might not come back from a climb was a time when which we try to avoid, we got trapped in the middle of a thunderstorm at 13,700 feet, where you have no protection. We were actually pressed against a wall. And the lightning is striking all around. The electricity is sort of penetrating into your body. Sparks fly from anything metal to you, like our hiking sticks. The thunder, when it happens, penetrates your body all through.
Because you're so much closer to it?
It's like being in front of huge woofer speakers. You know how that sound, that bass sound penetrates? Uh-huh. But, 10 times. And that was really scary, and we didn't really know if we were going to get out of that.
Oh, my God. What year was that?
Let's see. That was Crestone Peak, and that probably was 5 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. But that doesn't scare you? You're like,
well, that did scare me.
Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing about hanging on the side of a mountain that is as scary as being in a thunderstorm way above tree line.
Right.
To me, that's as frightening as it gets.
And how is it up there, like, breathing?
Well, somewhere around 13,000 feet, the air has no oxygen left in it. You take a breath and you feel like I didn't just take a breath, because you don't get much.
So do you bring like oxygen tanks with you at all, or?
You can, and often for higher peaks that are overseas, people do that. But the other thing to do is to stop frequently, catch your breath, get your oxygen saturation back up, and then continue on, which is what I did on these mountains. So
these big 14ers, what is a typical timeline? Like, how long are you gone? Does it take to get up and then to get back down?
If you're backpacking to get to a lake first the day before, that can be anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 hours, depending upon how high the lake is.
Okay.
And then you're setting camp and you're eating and sleeping and then getting up early. From there, for me, because I'm slower than a 25-year-old, it would be 8 to 12 hours would be a typical climb.
Okay.
The longest I've ever done was the hardest mountain. It was 18 hours.
Oh, my gosh.
And it sounds like, how do you keep going that long? But again, you're so focused on being in the moment.
Yeah.
And if you're fit, the body will do what the mind tells it to.
So when you get to the top, do you sleep there then? If it's 8 to...
Not at summit.
Okay.
You would not want to stay above tree line longer than you have to, because again, if weather comes in...
Yeah.
There is one guy that has slept on all 58 summits and wrote a book on it, and he got almost nailed a few times by the weather, but he had a weatherman that was communicating through a sat phone, whether to run off or not. So, wow. I mean, there's always somebody that's got the next big challenge.
Right. So then when you got to the top, you would come down a little bit, sleep.
Come down a fair amount. Usually you'd want to come down right to tree line, which is at about 12,000 feet.
Okay.
The reason why is that usually you'll find water around there.
Okay.
And if there are animals around, you want to string up anything that smells, like food and toothpaste and whatever, high up in a tree.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if you have it with you in your tent, will attract a bear.
Interesting. So string up, you hang them from, like you take a string and you hang it from a branch?
So you don't want it too close to a tree because they can climb a tree to get it. So you throw a rock with a string on it up one tree, and then up another tree, and then you string it across, and you lower it down, tie your thing, and pull it. So it's 20 feet off of each tree.
Oh my gosh!
And 20 feet in the air.
Wow. So how heavy is your backpack usually when you're going up?
When you're backpacking to with all your equipment to camp, that's usually 28 to 35 pounds.
That's a lot of extra weight.
35's a lot for me. So I try to tweak exactly how much is in there. A day pack that you're climbing with will be 14 to 16 pounds.
Okay. And do you have any desire to climb Everest?
No.
No. Okay. Why is that?
Everest is the way people climb Everest is that they have a guide. They wait for the right weather. And the route, although it's challenging, but the route's all laid out for them. The ropes are there, the ladders that go across crevasses and so forth. And you're doing it because you want to claim that you've been in the highest place on earth.
Right.
What I have enjoyed about these mountains is that it involves more of what's called mountaineering, which means that you're discovering the route. You've researched the mountain, you understand it, but it's not like there's a path to the top.
So Everest has a path that everybody stays on.
It has a route, yes. Every summer or every climbing season, the Sherpas will go and actually set up, because the mountain changes from one season to the next. It's got rock falls and avalanches.
Yeah.
So they'll then go and set a whole new set of ropes and paths and ladders to get to the top based upon what the mountain looks like that season.
So if they're setting it up, why are there so many deaths?
Well, a lot of the deaths are because they're just running into altitude sickness problems.
Okay.
When you get above somewhere around 26,000 feet, you're in what's called the dead zone. The body starts dying, and you just don't want to be up there too long. And what's been happening recently with Everest is that there's an area at what's called the South Col, which I think is about 1,500 feet below the summit, that is huge. It's the size of a football field.
Wow.
And so they get up there, and there could be as many as 100 tents set there, waiting for the right weather to go for the summit push.
Okay.
And these are a lot of different groups, and they're not controlled. They're not staged.
Right.
So as soon as the forecast is the weather's going to be good, they all pile on the climb. And so there's a huge line. There's literally a line. Could be hundreds of people lined up trying to get to summit through very narrow places. And this last year, where there was that very well-publicized photo of so many people lined up for the summit, they were up there just too long, just not moving. And people were dying because of altitude.
And they get left there, right? Because you just can't bring them down the mountain.
A lot of them do.
I've seen the pictures where it's like just
I had a friend that did it during that period. Fortunately, his guide decided to get him going at 8 o'clock the night before. Mm-hmm. So they had gotten up to summit and back down before. But he says you were stepping over dead bodies.
I mean, that's got to be such a weird...
No kidding.
It's like you have to sometimes, I guess, become immune to it in a weird way. But like, I
can only guess because I haven't been there, that you're so focused on trying to reach the goal, which is summit, that you'll do anything. You'll walk over dead bodies. Who knows? But that would depend on each personality. But so it's not something I aspire to.
Okay, so you've done the 14ers, which is 14,000 feet. So right. Everest is almost twice as high?
Yeah, it is twice as high.
So 26,000 feet, you said, is the dead zone?
That's where it starts. I think Everest tops out at 28 something, maybe 20, right at just under 29.
Just meaning like there's zero oxygen up there?
But there's other physiological effects of being that high. I'm not one to remember the medical names for them.
Okay.
But the body is just not getting enough of anything.
Right.
And it is, I guess you do it for short periods of time, but you certainly don't want to go to sleep up there.
Right. No, I mean, that's just scary. But so many people want to do it, but you're like, no, I'm good with my 14ers.
Yeah, because I like the whole experience. To me, it's not just getting to summit. That is a piece of it. Mm-hmm. But there's so many other things that are so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's the wildflowers that you see along the way. It's the little animals that you run into. It's the architectural beauty of the mountains. I mean, the formation of the rocks. Everything is just amazing to look at.
And doesn't it, I mean, when you get to that to the top and you look out on how big everything is, it probably just makes you really realize how small we really are and how we're not.
You definitely feel that way, not just from summit, but just at anywhere on the mountain. Everything is so big. The scale is so enormous.
Kind of like our problems that we have day to day are like just nothing.
You don't even think about the problems you have day to day, which is one of the great things about doing these climbs.
This is what life's really about, not this,
You feel at one with nature, and
Yeah.
that is a great feeling.
Yeah.
And it's one that has captivated me,
Uh-huh.
and I'm still doing it.
Isn't that amazing? Do you think you're going to hike till the end?
I will hike till I can't hike.
Isn't that amazing? It's probably kept you younger. And
Well, it has certainly kept me on the right diet and on the right fitness regimen and with the right mental attitude.
Right.
I think all those things are great. I mean, I believe that passion, which is what I have for these mountains, is actually at the core of quality of life at any time in life.
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning thinking about what mountain am I going to do next. I research it online, keeps your brain active.
Yeah.
You're motivated
And excited.
for fitness that is more than you would do if you had no goal.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So what do you talk a lot about this passion. What do you say to somebody who's maybe in their 20s or 30s and they're sitting at a job and they're collecting a paycheck and they have the health insurance, but they're just miserable. They're not passionate. What would your advice be to them?
In these talks that I've been giving around the country, in a few places there have been key representatives of universities, and they've come up to me afterwards and talked to me about the very issue that you're raising, particularly with kids that are 18 to 22, 25, in that range that are in school still. And apparently many of them are despondent about what they think the world is today, that the challenges are too big for them, that they're depressed at all the news that they hear that's going on, and they need to hear more of that there are people that face big challenges and overcome them and are really happy because of it.
Right.
What do you do with people that feel like they can't and they don't have a passion?
Or they're stuck. They're financially stuck.
Well, it doesn't take money to find that passion.
Yeah.
I mean, mountain climbing, for example, doesn't cost anything to speak of.
Yeah.
It takes first understanding that is what you're missing.
Right.
And that it's possible to find a passion. If you're not even there, if your to-do list is just full from morning to night with boring stuff that you just think you have to do. I mean, the first thing you got to do is clear off about 20% of your to-do list and create a vacuum.
It's true. But you were an entrepreneur.
I was.
The majority of your life. So what I think is like, how does somebody take that risk and do something for a career that they're passionate about versus working for the man?
They've got to start.
Got to just start, right?
Just
like it is
start.
a mountain and just
and
go full in.
And there's a great quote by Muhammad Ali that I think I have in the book.
Okay.
That says, to win, you have to have the skill and the will. But the will is more important than the skill.
It's true, right?
And that so characterized Emmy, it characterizes me, it characterizes anybody who is going for a passion.
Yeah.
That you got to start off with an attitude, don't quit. Go for it. What's the big risk? You might fail. So what? One of the great American elements of spirit, certainly in Silicon Valley and the whole tech world, is take the risk. You might fail. You'll learn something from the failure and go on to the next.
Exactly, right? It's the lessons. You don't learn from the victories. You learn
and
from
what's
the
the fear coming from? So what if you might fail? Just focus on how to succeed.
And what are some of your fears that you have today?
My fears today, I wouldn't characterize things as fears.
Okay.
Because I believe that almost any challenge can be met.
Did you always think that, though?
Well, I must have, because, I started companies that were very improbable in the ability to succeed.
Right.
If you put a plan together to achieve something, the plan may come out saying you can't achieve it. And so I say, well, don't believe the plan. Just go for it.
Okay. No, that's
It's been part of me my whole life.
Okay. So
And I know that that's not usual.
Mm-hmm.
So it may sound like I'm preaching to those who say, well, that's not me. That's not my personality. And you're asking me, well, how do you get them there? And I don't know the answer to that question other than saying, listen to the stories of some other people who have and treat that as an inspiration. It's the reason why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
It's the whole underlying theme of this book.
It's never too late to start and to have a passion, right?
And don't let the challenge block you. And don't let other people who say, I don't think you can do that. You know how many people told me that I was crazy climbing the high mountains?
You were 63 years old about to climb a mountain that some 30-year-olds couldn't get up. Of course they told you that.
And after a while, I treated that as kind of a fun interaction between us.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's still people think I'm crazy.
And did you think when you started you were doing it to prove them wrong, or you were doing it to prove to yourself
No,
you could do it?
I genuinely started it because I saw the passion that my dog was exhibiting. And when I followed her, I looked around and I went, I see what she's talking about.
Yeah. It's just like it's getting in touch with a whole different part of yourself, and spiritually and mentally. And
it is both spiritual, mental, and physical.
You're encouraging me to go on a hike.
Well, if
I
you're
don't know about a climb.
If you're out in Colorado, I got some great hikes for you.
I'm going to hit you up on that. I don't know if I can do the climb, but I can definitely do the hike.
I have friends that come in from sea level.
Okay.
And I have some great climbs for them. So I've done about every one there is out there in that part of Colorado.
Isn't that just so much fun? So when does what do you do in the winter? Are you a skier?
I am a skier.
You are, okay.
And I thought that skiing would be good prep for climbing, but it's not. Even skiing bumps, going downhill, skiing moguls, is different muscles. But there's a newer kind of skiing that does prep you for climbing, which is called skinning. Skinning? Where you put what are called skins on the bottom of your skis that is like a mohair that when you push up, they smooth. And if they fall back, they stick. Okay. So you can shuffle on your skis up a mountain. And then you can lock your heels down and ski down the mountain.
Instead of taking the chairlift?
Instead of taking the chairlift. So you skin up the mountain, you pull the skins off, lock your heels down, and ski down the mountain. And skinning up a mountain are the muscles for climbing. Do you see a lot of people doing this? Could you imagine? Really? There are more and more. Aspen is trying to become a destination for uphill skiing. Is that, I mean, talk about getting your cardio in so you could have some cheeseburgers at lunch. Huge cardio. Oh, yeah. You feel like you could eat anything after. Right. That, yeah. That's right. We need to go skinning. We're going skinning, and then we're going straight to the Mexican restaurant. In fact, after every climb, we feel like we have a pass for the next 24 hours. We can eat anything we want to eat. Seriously. There are climbs where I've lost 3 or 4 pounds on a climb, and that's not through water loss because I drink like crazy. Yeah. So it's just because it's just burning so much and you can't get enough calories in. You can't eat enough protein in high extended exercise. So what are you eating, like cans of tuna fish? No, there are bars that are, you call them candy bars, but it's not so much candy, but it's protein bars. So you're just eating protein bars and water. A lot of protein bars. For me, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are great because the peanut is a lot of protein. And the jelly gives you some sugar energy. Yeah. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are the best. That's what I'm going to pack when I go hiking with you is peanut butter and jelly. Oh, yeah. We'll have the same. But I'm going to give you my grandma's specialty. You have to add a slab of butter to it. All right. It's so good. It's like, and white bread is the key. If we're going to be burning all the calories we can afford. You can eat it whatever you want. Right. Then we can afford the extra. Because it's gone by the time you get down. Oh, my gosh. And what's a typical climb, like 4 or 5 hours? Well, if you're talking about a hike like we would do, no, that's more like 2 hours, 2 to 3. Okay. I can do that. I think I can. Yeah, and half of that is coming back down. Right. So going up is hour and a half, 2 hours, and then a little faster. Are you getting to the top of something where you can see out? Yes. Okay. Yeah. And are you, in the summer, do people go and hike up the actual ski mountains? Or some do. Okay. That is my prep in the late spring after the ski mountain closes. Okay. I put spikes on my boots and hike up. There's a mountain called Tyhack that's 1,700 feet up. and it's steep, and I do that 20 times in 40 days, every other day.
Oh, my gosh.
And that's my first layer of preparation.
Every time I don't want to go to the gym, I'm just going to call you and be like, how do I motivate?
Well, it is my gym, but it's more interesting than a gym.
Well, right. You're not just sitting in a dirty elliptical machine.
No, there's views, there's other people.
There's a purpose, there's a destination.
Right.
That you can get to.
Yeah, so it's motivating.
So is there any advice you would give to your younger self?
To my younger self?
Yeah. It seemed like you really didn't have any fears, so.
Well, you mean, do I have decisions I wished I would have made differently?
Sure.
I'm sure there are some of those.
Of course, right?
Yeah. I should have sold the stock sooner.
Right.
We have those. But life has been good. Even though it's had some downs, there are ways to get yourself up. And in my case, these 10 years, 64 to 74 in age, if I look back, were the best 10 years of my life. And I think that's an amazing idea, because when I was 60, I would never have believed that, the state of mind that I was in.
Yeah.
And how great is it to think that it's possible that the best 10 years of your life are still ahead of you, no matter how good life has already been.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people start, well, I'm getting older, or can't do this, or running out of time, or there's always an excuse.
Or I have a right to take it easy because I just hit 60 or 65, but at age 60, you might have a third of your life left yet.
Yes.
If you live the statistics.
Right.
And what are you going to do with that? I mean, it's a question that he's asking. I mean,
it's truly inspiring and motivating. And have you had people reach out to you, like big celebrities or anything, reach out to you and say, I want to take up this sport?
Well, I've had people reaching out to me, and especially after this book has been published and released. I'm getting questions all across the map of, how do I find a passion? How do I overcome the challenge to get there? Is it really mountain climbing I need to do? They're not realizing that that's just a metaphor for some kind of passion that doesn't even have to be physical.
Right.
And
so you could start basket weaving.
I had a good friend saying, how do I find mine? And I asked him, is there anything that was a little attractive to you that you've bypassed? And he said, I love the art. I love art.
Yeah.
And I said, well, pick 5 forms of art and take an introductory class to each one. See if one of them pulls you a little more than the others.
Yeah.
That might be a direction.
Right.
There are probably books written on how to find a passion.
Yeah.
So I don't come across as an expert in that. I just know what happened to me.
Yeah.
And, but I think you need to be open to it.
Do you ever think if your wife hadn't got this dog, if this ever would have happened?
Yeah, it might not have.
Yeah.
There certainly wouldn't have been a book, because there wouldn't have been an Emmy.
Yeah, she's so cute. So where can people find the book?
The book is for sale almost everywhere. It's certainly on Amazon. It's Barnes & Noble.
And it's The Dog Who Took Me Up a Mountain is the title of the book. Right.
And I have been around at a lot of bookstores all across the country, east to west coast. I know it's many of those. A lot of indie bookstores. I'm also, in a couple of days, I'm here in New York, and on Friday I'm at the American Kennel Club Museum of the Dog at 2 o'clock, where I'll be speaking and also book signing, and there'll be books there. And so but it's easy to find the book. On Amazon, it's been the #1 new release in mountain climbing.
Isn't that amazing?
Which is, cool.
So that's any more other books in your future, you think?
Oh, I do have another one in mind, but my publisher keeps telling me, focus on this book. And so that's what I'm doing. Be in the present, right?
Yes. Pretend you're on a mountain, Rick.
And
don't fall off.
Overcome this challenge.
Yes. And do you have a website where they can go and find out more information about you? You do, right? It's rickcrandall.com?
I do. rickcrandallbooks.com.
Okay.
And there's information on what's going on with the book, some information on Emmy. There's also a blog on outdoor activity, everything.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the questions you've asked, what to do if you run into a mountain lion or a bear,
right.
what equipment to have in your pack, how to pick the right friend for going with you.
Yeah.
So
somebody you don't want to push off the mountain, preferably.
Well, and somebody that wants to go at your speed.
Right. This is true.
Right.
This is true. So, and do you have an Instagram account where you're taking pictures on these hikes?
No, I have a Facebook.
But you should get an Instagram account too and take pictures, because a lot of people won't be able to do all the 14ers or get to all these mountains, and I think it would be really wonderful to be able to see the top of these mountains through your eyes.
Okay, that does exist.
Okay.
It's not Instagram. I have another website called rickcrandall.net.
rickcrandall.net.
And it has a story with photographs on all of the 58 mountains.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's heavily visited by people who are trying to figure out, well, what level of mountain can I do?
Yeah.
And that's all there. It's the routes, it's the challenges, it's also the lore of the mountain, how to get there, what my experience was on it, and a lot of photographs on every single one of them.
And it also sounds like a coffee table book.
Well, that's, the next idea.
I love it. I can't wait to have it on my table. Well, thank you so much for being my guest on Next to Madison. And you're so inspiring. I am much younger than you, and I don't know if I could ever do a 14er. But never say never.
You're a great interviewer, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. So you guys get his book, The Dog Who Took Me Up a Mountain. So you can follow his journey with all 58 14ers on rickcrandall.net. His website is rickcrandallbooks.com, and you can purchase the book online or at your local bookstore. And I guess the message here is it's never too late to find a passion. So go out and try to find yours, and just remember that life is short, so live in the moment and be like Emmy. Is that good? Thank you, Rick. Perfect. I appreciate it. And you guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Next to Madison. We'll see you guys next time to find out who's next. Hi, your host, Madison Malloy here. I just wanted to remind you guys to please follow the show on social media at Next to Madison. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, or you feel that you would be a great guest on the show and would love to be considered, please feel free to email me at nexttomadison@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms. And I thank you again for listening.